recovery may look messy and up and down and still painful. Yet that does not mean that it's not real, that it's not taking place, and that it will not end with a story of restoration.
So maybe as a place to begin, tell us kind of how you guys met and give us a little bit of your love story, and then kind of God's calling for you to work with couples, especially around sex and relationship.
Well, I was 15 going on. Not really. I was 15, actually.
Oh, wow.
The Sound of Music,
15.
you've gone
You were
big
15.
from the get-go.
We were 15. We met at church.
Really?
We met at a summer camp
Oh.
at church, from church. We didn't go to church at that point, but through the summer camp, we connected.
So was it love at first sight?
No.
One of those, like, you saw her from
No.
across.
I could not stand him. He was that popular guy.
Oh, he was that guy.
And no.
Just had it all together. All the girls liked him.
Yeah, I only look like an extrovert, but it was too much for me at the moment.
I'm with you. Denisa, you and I are so much alike. Yeah. Yeah.
I can
we'll let the
already tell
extroverts.
we have some common things.
So you met at summer camp. And
Yes, but then we started attending the same church that hosted the camp, and we're part of the same youth group. Became really good friends, to best friends, to having a lot of opposition to our deep friendship because I came from the other side of the tracks.
Okay.
And there was a lot of interest, on the son of the wealthy colonel
Gotcha.
in the town, and all this stuff.
He was
Actually-
a sugar daddy. And,
Well, his dad was.
oh, gotcha.
My issue was more with the parents than with the girls, because the
Really?
parents wanted to marry them to him. But here we are.
You guys need to stop.
Stop the story
behaving
there.
Yeah.
So
It's
how-
all right.
But
We'll
it
get
was-
your perspective, Jorge, in just a second. So.
I like how she says it better.
How long did it take?
Between being friends and, we married at 21,
Okay.
and camp was at 15.
Okay.
So those years now, we did marry early because we were very serious into God.
Yeah.
Like, that was a decision we made, that it was it. It's been it since.
Eventually, once we were going to the same college as well. And then we were not doing so well because we were, I think, too distracted with one another, spending time on campus rather than being in class, skipping classes. We started to do really
You
bad.
got a whole life to learn stuff.
Listen, there was
you only
okay.
have today to connect,
And this friendship
right?
was so special. And soon I realized that I could not be without her, even as a friend. And I'm pretty sure that was her prayer. And I could not be without this girl. What is it? And she became almost like indispensable. And then she tested me. And she said, I'm going to disappear from his life for a few days.
He needed to go to the next level.
Oh, gotcha. So you
needed
helped
to-
him.
yes.
You nudged him.
So I said, you know what? This is not good for my reputation.
Right.
I had a testimony to keep.
That's
He said, I might be losing opportunities.
And
like
we're
with
nothing.
Guys, because of
true.
us. So close. I said, what? So, yeah, then I
love
passed
it.
the test. I
Okay,
guess.
well, wait. Tell us about
I
was
told
her-
him,
it was
what
her
was the
idea.
test? Yeah.
I told him we needed a little space, a little
Okay.
distance, that it
Okay.
would be healthy for us.
And I'm like, why?
I did that to Aaron too. That is so cool.
And because I
No.
knew.
Denisa and I'm telling
You
you,
guys are like
you were my
he
sister.
broke up with me, and he argues that he did not know. He broke up with me because
just
I
said-
dated someone
I used
else.
the word you use, space.
torture
we
you or
need-
just-
No, he wanted to take a break, but he communicated it that he was breaking.
exactly what
So-
you were saying.
Well, but we
I
were
was
not
testing
dating.
her.
We had not held hands. We had
Okay.
not done any of that. We had not talked love. But our hearts were already headed in that direction. So I needed to protect my heart. And I was becoming vulnerable. And a girl, imagine in the Dominican Republic, 36 years ago, well, even longer than that, won't tell a guy, I like you. Like, that was
Not back
impossible.
in the days, yeah.
Yeah, it's his job.
So I said, let's
Yeah.
take a little break. Let's give each other a little space. And I knew he was going to go find me at school, so I didn't go to school that day. And we didn't have cell phones. But I remember one friend called me and said, your friend was looking for you with red roses.
Oh,
Ah.
you pulled out all the
because
stops.
I have to play all my cards.
You were
Yeah.
winning her back.
I knew
You
it
were
was
saying,
I disappeared for
was
a few
that hour
days.
enough space for you and time for you?
It was inconceivable. Like, why? This is so pure, so good. Why?
Yeah.
But she was wise.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about my wife. You're going to see it very easily.
I think
She's
it's
wise,
great.
and it's a gift from God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that wisdom allowed her to make me realize what I could have lost if I didn't do the right things,
I do, and I love it actually
I do
because
too.
we have 3 daughters and a son. So with our daughters, I always told them, make the guy earn his way into your heart. Like, play a little bit of hard to get, just
I needed to make sure that it wasn't me
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
I needed him to convince
And
me.
to pursue.
That's great.
Take that step.
Yeah. What's the benefits of getting married so young, do you think?
I think I love the fact that we are so free to do ministry now and still being kind of in the younger side. Because I don't know about you, but I feel very young.
Well, you look 29, so
Well,
yeah.
thank you.
Aged well.
Greg, thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
she looks 21, by the way. So, yeah.
So having that freedom and not that you ever stop being a parent,
Yeah.
because once you have them, they're yours forever.
Yeah.
And the burden, responsibility stays with you for a lifetime. But they no longer live with us. We have the freedom to travel, to do ministry.
Nice.
And being married so young allowed us to really build a greater foundation for what we needed, especially the topics and the things that we do professionally.
We try to live a life that is honoring of the Lord. And you're going to see us talk about temptation, opportunity, creating spaces, intentionality. We were very intentional. Why wait? Why not start the journey that God has for us? And we found great blessings in that. So we do encourage it when people know what they're doing.
Yeah, so good.
I think enough
Yeah, you guys
maturity
got
to
to-
understand the calling, first of all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maturity to understand what a relationship entails and the commitment and the responsibility that it is. So
For sure.
I think we have those elements in our
love it.
favor.
Yeah. So let's shift a little bit and talk to that younger couple that's listening. What would you say is necessary for them to build a strong foundation for their future marriage?
I think the wake-up call that we're not going to be honeymooners and boyfriend and girlfriend with benefits, now legal forever.
That's a good way
Because
to
the
say it.
honeymoon
Yeah.
stage ends.
Well, yeah, I remember us
It's
going.
about 30 months, the research shows.
We
yeah.
went to a park for a honeymoon, and I felt like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here by ourselves? That doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
But setting the right foundation for when that starts to wear off and for when things start to shift, like we are spiritual, we are body, we are like, emotions. There's so many parts to us.
Yeah.
So building that foundation of connecting.
Okay.
We talk a lot about communication, but communicating spiritually, having that foundation of coming to God and speaking our spiritual language with Him and together, speaking about our emotions and problems and things I don't like and things that bother me early on, I think are so key into when things happen and bigger issues arise, being able to handle it and have the conversation.
And that's hard for a lot of couples. Why, Jorge, why do couples struggle kind of connecting spiritually?
I think it's so much easier to go into God's presence and feel that you have a complete cycle, almost, I want to say. In His presence, you don't need anything else. You get so used to spending time alone in His presence, even before you got married.
Right.
So you almost learn to protect that and fight for that space.
Yeah.
When you have to deal with a third person in this triangle, right? In this a relationship with God and then another person added to the equation, you need to understand that there's different dynamics. And I like to consider the fact that this new person in your life is actually a closer representation of God's intimacy, especially if it's your spouse.
Yeah.
God allows you to develop intimacy through a person that you can actually see and experience and inner share emotions with, which is much harder to do when it's just me and God.
Yeah.
Because God, okay, He cares for me, He loves me unconditionally. I can cry out to Him, but can you cry in front of your spouse and be that vulnerable and show who you truly are. So I think the level of intimacy that you can gain from integrating your spouse into your inner circle, I want to say, and your spiritual life, is going to produce
like
so
the
much
holy of holies,
so much growth and ability to show grace in a different level and to embrace your differences in a better, in a healthier way.
I love that. That's a beautiful perspective. As you were talking, it made me think about so Adam and Eve. What's always one thing that's always fascinated me about the story is that when God says to Adam, it's not good that man should dwell alone, it always intrigued me. Like, why didn't he identifies a problem? Why didn't he just solve it right then and there? But if you remember from the story, he actually has Adam go ahead and name all the animals. And in my mind, I picture Adam, naming these animals and being so aware that these animals had a mate, had a partner, had someone with them that would have just stood out as he kept naming and naming and naming. He would have been so unbelievably overwhelmed with this sense of feeling lonely. And that I don't have what they have.
Right.
So good.
And it made me go, I wonder if a part of why that was just, it would have been one thing just to say, okay, here's Eve, here's your counterpart, versus letting him experience that I'm so long to have what all these animals have, that by the time that God makes her and creates her, that he was so ready for that. And it kind of ties in what you're saying, like just that,
I love that.
that joy of going, man, I got my person and I can bring her into this holy of holies, this intimacy that I have between me and the Lord.
And even bigger, like Aaron, that question to us is so precious because there's so much work. I would love to be out of work. I would love to have to find something else to do.
Yeah, versus working with the couples. Yeah.
If we did a better job on the foundation of these that we're talking about, all of the other problems that we encounter in marriage, differences with money, personality, sex, you name it.
Yeah.
It would be so different if we really were learned to be intimate at all the levels from
Early
the
on.
beginning.
Yeah.
I tell parents when they come and do intensive clinics with us, I said, okay, so now that you know how this is what you need to give your children when they're getting married. Send them for an intensive clinic. Like, forget about the dress, the venue, do this because it is critical. A foundation.
To learn how to be married, not just to get married.
Yeah.
Gottman suggests that the two pillars, and I'm pretty sure you guys are aware, are trust and commitment. Without those two, it's really hard to build a foundation.
Yeah.
And you talk about love in a very unique or selfish way, self-centered and self-driven, when in reality, are you really describing God's love that is unconditional and that is unselfish and that would go the extra mile and for the other person?
Yeah.
Because if you are, then let's talk about trust and commitment. Yeah. And let's see how they all integrate within this equation. Trust has to do with, I know that you're not unfaithful. I know that you don't have anybody else. I know that I'm uniquely to you and exclusive to you, but I also know that I can do what I can to make this work for us. Yeah. So you have to have that persuasion and be completely convinced that you, as my partner and myself, are both capable of producing what it needs to be produced. Yeah. And also the commitment on the other hand. Yeah.
Because ultimately that builds a marriage that is secure, safe and secure.
Right.
That safety is so important, and the security of I'm with you to the end is what Greg often says to me. And I love when I hear that. Yeah.
I love that.
Hopefully the ending is way down the road.
Way down. way down.
You guys are too young. Don't worry about it.
So you guys work with a lot of couples. What do you typically see when there's infidelity? Is there a scenario that you see? Are there certain markers within the marriage that there's a higher incidence of infidelity?
Well, lately it's been a little bit of a sad story. We have the privilege of working with leadership and trusted institutions. So we've seen a lot of leadership go south in that department. And it's become very discouraging. Obviously, what happens in the top trickles down. So there's a ripple effect on that.
There is.
Right.
I would say the biggest thing that we see is that we don't realize the boundaries that are necessary in a relationship in the day-to-day. I remember we were sharing at an event, and actually we didn't get invited back because
that happens to us all the time. That's so weird.
They felt we were legalistic in a way because we observe boundaries. Like, I know Jorge loves me. I don't doubt it. He knows I love him. I'm devoted to him. Like, this is being my one love. But I also know that I'm a human, and so is he. And we are capable of crossing whichever line. So for safety reasons, we try to observe honoring protocols that keep us on a safer side.
Yeah, like what? Like I love that. So those protocols, those boundaries, what would be some examples of what those look like?
A very, very simple, so obvious that I have to protect myself, not only because I'm a man, married man, but I'm never alone with another female.
Okay.
I don't spend time. I don't go to a restaurant. I don't have coffee. You could be a leader or a pastor. I don't care who you are. I must respect myself as a married man. So I would never spend time alone with a female.
Yeah.
I would not probably see it in therapy either, especially with a shut door. So for pastors out there, be very mindful, very careful of the message you're sending
What a
out.
businessman.
Anybody with an office, right? You need to be careful because it's not just about you, it's about the other person's vulnerability also. You might be exposing them or maybe offering an opportunity that they are empowered with. And they feel, oh, look, I have access. And they start entangling in this relationship without you even realizing.
No, it's not that we feel like, oh my gosh, men and women cannot have friendship and they cannot work together. This is that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we need to observe an environment that is conducive for it to be productive and safe. So like, I love churches that have glass doors. I love meeting in open spaces. We need to interact, and I am a female and you are a male, and that's fine. And we're building this project. There are scenarios and places, even with our friends, like personal friends, we don't text directly. We normally have text groups. It's a beautiful protocol.
You just never know what twist the story can take.
Especially around the texting and just connecting that way. It's so easy to lead into even an emotional affair.
Emojis. Emojis. I could just be sending you a smile, and you can be reading that as a little bit of a flirtatious connotation. Again, like we said in the beginning, the spiritual connection, the emotional connection, that intimacy, when it's lacking in a marriage, all of these possibilities of opportunities and temptation are worse. Therefore, we need to make sure that our marriages are we go through seasons of boredom, and you've heard the 7-year age, research those points that people get, vulnerable. Yeah, we need to keep an eye on it. What's happening to our flame, to our, freshness, to our wanting to be with each other. We need to keep those things healthy so that we are handling whatever comes our way in an easier way.
So infidelity typically doesn't just happen. It's a process that starts small.
Kind of the slow boil.
And it's like a snowball, right? It's as the mole rolls, then it grows up, grows up, and before you know, you're already trapped. So that's why cutting or taking action, preventive action, before you actually find yourself immersed so deeply, is the safest way.
Really being intentional about protecting the marriage. And so often we'll get the question, well, can men and women be friends? Can we have male and female friends? So often couples don't talk about it at all. and then they find themselves in a scenario where they're spending more time with a friend of the opposite sex. And like you said, it becomes a slow boil and heads down a pathway they never dreamt would happen. But I so agree, protecting the marriage and talking about what are the boundaries that we're setting in our relationship and doing that early on.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that you cannot have those friends. I actually lost my brother at 42, my only brother.
Yeah, so sorry.
And yes, and when I've identified 2 male friends that remind me of him. There's so many things that are about him. I get to talk to them and open my heart and see similarities, and our spouses are sitting in there as well.
Yeah,
that's
is
a good
not
protection.
Diminishing the friendship that we have, but it's keeping it in a safe context.
Yeah, well, even like even here, as we literally the 4 of us sit together, this is where we can all relate to each other in that way, and laugh and talk and
be ourselves.
And be ourselves.
I'm very people like you probably.
Yeah, really. That's so
we
shocking.
were wondering.
Wow.
You're a people person.
So
really.
Early on, though, in the game, newly converted to Christ, I remember God dealing with my personality.
Yes.
And he spoke very clearly, you have a gift, but that gift can also be your worst enemy.
Yeah.
So I can allow myself to flow in the freedom of who I am, but I also need to set boundaries around my strength so it doesn't become my weakness.
Because Jorge, for us as men, what are some of the big reasons why kind of guys might get into an affair? Because I imagine it's probably different for women.
I think for a guy, getting that validation is so crucial, especially as they're hitting that midlife. Later, like I don't have someone at home telling me how good I look. We have needs; they are legit, and we've seen a lot of we've heard a lot of stories of guys experiencing that sense of loneliness and
craving
lack
validation,
lack of validation and acknowledgement. They feel like they're into a journey by themselves almost, not because they're ultimately responsible, although they're both are, I feel, in the relationship. But if the spouse is not attentive to meet those needs, and it's just so self-centered or just oblivious about it, you might be missing opportunities to connect with your spouse. Yeah. So I think it's important that the wife would be looking after how can I feed my husband in this season.
I think that's
and understand
great.
the season. Where is he now versus 20 years ago?
Yeah, because if you go back and read in the Song of Solomon, just King Solomon and the Shunammite maiden. So it's their love story. But what's so fascinating is all their dialogue is all verbally affirming each other. I mean, if you really from that lens read it, you're blown away going, my goodness, really? I mean, when we think of Song of Solomon, we think passion, romance, and sex. And really, I think one of the most beautiful lessons of that entire story is how much effort they put in pre-married, once they got married, how much of their communication that we get to read about is all just affirming each other. It's a beautiful example.
Maintaining that throughout the different seasons of life.
Yeah. Danisa, what do you see with women? Why do women stray?
More for emotional reasons, lack of emotional connection, not feeling seen or heard. And the way that I feel is that because we don't keep up with the weekly connecting and talking and expressing things, and sometimes through seasons we just jump through all of that, we lose that good habit of expressing things when it's not a huge buildup. Then I get distracted because somewhere else I'm hearing, "Oh, that is such a pretty blue color on you." Well, my husband used to tell me that, but he didn't, which actually he did.
I was going to say I like the blue color too.
He did. But there's those little things. Now, it's not a big deal, but when regularly you're having some of those things missing, feeling that I can touch your heart, I see you, you're here, we're going through some motions, it's like there's a void. And we need that emotional connection.
That's a great perspective. So for the couples that you've worked with, who have been involved, one, both, but there's been infidelity in the relationship. Kind of walk us through, what does the journey towards healing look like for that couple? Mm-hmm. So what do they need to really do? Make sure you don't do this. I mean, what are some of what you guys have learned?
This is hope-based help that you're getting. So none of you are walking here because you don't believe that there's something that could be done. Mm-hmm. And I think we do the work very, very intentionally to remind them there is hope. You might not see it. The pain is so great that you might not see it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But hope remains all the way through the end. Hope is one of those things that stay with you. And the more you choose to believe that is fixable, that there's something that we can do, the more likely to see the outcome that you wish.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So in the process, though, the person who was the victim obviously come all broken. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of emotions at play. There's a lot of regulation that we have to do. Let's take them to a place of understanding, embracing the reality. You know, they go through the different phases, obviously, and we all know.
But I think one of the key things that we say in the beginning is that we don't work with guilty people.
Right.
So if they're coming for an affirmation of a guilty verdict or something, they've come to the wrong place.
Okay.
And there are marriages that choose not to work with us.
Yeah.
Because if we are based on hope and the grace of God, we can have guilty people. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to take responsibility for things, but we make both see where they need to own some things and take responsibility for the work. So we start with that. We say we do promise that God can heal and that these can be restored, but we need to start on the basis of grace and not guilty.
Yeah.
So that we don't perpetuate a victim. You were a victim for a moment, but you're no longer a victim. Now we are someone recovering, coming out of there, coming back to being whole again.
So we help them identify what took you guys here, what led to this phase, to this moment, to this brokenness. And it can be a long journey for some people. Not everybody respond the same way. But once they see and once they embrace and they buckle up and say, okay, so I see what happened, they have to acknowledge that they want to be committed to the process. So restoring trust is basically our job. Let's give you skills, strategies so that you can rebuild trust in this relationship. The trust that is so valuable and it was broken. It was broken. That's the one thing that holds a relationship together. And if it's broken for anything, even through a lie, it might have not manifested through a physical affair. But you lied to me. You broke my trust. You broke my heart. It's the same process. We need to rebuild.
I'm thinking also not to overpromise. A fantasy world that with a magic wand, God is going to take all the pain away.
Right.
And
or
it's going to make
alone.
you, it's going to make you faithful all of a sudden. There might still be struggles that we need to go deeper places and work. Sometimes we need to refer people for some trauma work. Recovery may look messy. And up and down and still painful. Yet that does not mean that it's not real, that it's not taking place, and that it will not end with a story of restoration.
That's beautiful. I was reading in 1 Kings, so the story, I think it's in chapter 19, to where Elijah, the prophet Elijah, is fearing for his life. So he goes into the wilderness and he's traveling, exhausted, ends up sitting down under a broom tree, and basically just cries out to God saying, I'm done, like, take me. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm exhausted. And what I love is that God doesn't rescue him and eliminate the journey that he's on, because he's actually going to Mount Sinai to go where God would be, and they would have this conversation. And so while he's asleep, the angel wakes him up and gives him bread. So that was baking on a hot rock in a jug of water.
Must have been delicious.
Yeah,
It sounds really good.
Some
right
versions
now.
say cake, so I like to think of it as cake because that
like
is
cake.
awesome. But what struck me about the story is that the angel is telling him, you've got to eat all this or you're not going to make the journey. And what was interesting to me is God could have teleported him to Mount Sinai. There could have been a million ways that God could have eliminated the journey that he was on that was exhausting. But instead, he provided the sustenance. He provided something that Elijah needed to keep going. And he actually was given enough to do the 40-day and 40-night journey that it took. And that reminds me exactly what you're saying, is that God's not going to just take away the pain, and the trust isn't just magically going to reappear, but he is going to be faithful to give us the cake, the water, the new mercies, the mercies that are new every morning.
Absolutely.
Along the journey. And that to me is we're hearing you, that's the hope
I love it.
that you're talking about.
You know what else he provided to Elijah in that same story? Rest.
Yes, exactly.
Because when you're exhausted from the pain, from the journey,
broom
from carrying
tree,
this burden for so long, you oftentimes stop listening to God's voice. Or it becomes a greater task. It's harder for me to stop my life, pause, and seek understanding of the situation. And then it is until you actually sit down and let go of everything, stop thinking so much about it, give your brain a break, go to God's presence, seek that peace, no? And then, and only then, can God speak to your soul.
That's right.
And maybe reignite that hope that you once had, or maybe that you need so desperately.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. We're so grateful for the ministry that you guys have together. It's fun seeing another couple, who love each other and enjoy each other. You guys obviously like each other, but to see the ministry that you're doing,
We still do.
and how God really uses your marriage and your relationship to help all these couples that you've been working with. What an honor it is to have sat with you guys. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We love sharing with you guys.